Welcome to D&D.
Not that D&D.
I'm Eller, the Disciple.
And I'm Tally, the Dissenter.
And today we want to talk about values and beliefs.
So tell me, what is your value? What is your belief? How are those things different?
Well, I'm going to start with definitions that I just got off of Google.
Very scientific.
Yes.
Academic, I guess is the way to say it.
I know. And there's a ton out there, so the definitions can vary. It's very interesting that they vary so much. But these are the two I liked that kind of felt like they were easy to distinguish.
Okay.
So belief is an acceptance that a statement is true, and a value is a judgment of what is important.
Okay.
So hopefully that's a kind of an easy distinction for our listeners as well. Or are you? You're making a face.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about it because I think that this is actually a good conversation to have, because we might believe in something, but what we value is different. Like, I believe that people should vaccinate their children, but I don't say it's a value. The value that fuels that belief is feeling like it's respectful of other people to help with herd immunity.
Yeah.
So that's more of like, it goes back to that respecting, loving aspect.
Yeah. Community.
Yeah, I want to hear more about this.
I actually am in the process of doing a book read on Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, and I will continue to use her resources. So if you haven't heard of her, she's got a ton of research and several books, and I think it is totally worthwhile to read some of her stuff and take a look at the different perspectives that she brings. So I'm reading Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, and there is a section that has you actually do an analysis to determine what your values are. I haven't read that. I'm doing it this week. So, however, I did take a quick look at the values list, and I'm just going to give you a few of the things off there. I knew that this chapter was going to happen, and I've already figured out what my values are.
I want to borrow it, I think. I want to know. I'm very curious to know.
Yeah. But here's some examples of values from her list. Adventure, belonging, contribution, friendship, kindness, justice, perseverance, and wisdom. And there's even a spot, when I looked at the list, there's even a spot to write your own. Like if you find something that you think should be on that list. Now this list is, that I gave you 8. There's probably at least 80 on that list. So
while you're reading this list, I'm thinking, adventure, like how is that a value? I'm trying to understand how some of these are values.
Oh, I think that's great that you asked, because I actually have a friend, when I saw this on here, I thought it was an unusual thing to identify as a value. So I have a friend who took off from work to go and walk a trail. And I don't remember which trail. They sent us pictures. They did it in 2 stages. It was a really long trail. I don't remember the name of it. Sorry. But I really thought that was really awesome that this person, like, it mattered enough to them to quit their job and to go and do this adventure. And so I felt like that person might be a good example of somebody who has adventure as a value. And so that's not my value. I don't think I would ever feel comfortable taking a year off from a job and just do something like that.
I don't think I'd ever be financially privileged enough to be able to take a year off from a job.
I don't know what that, I mean, the fact is some people don't feel like they need a roof over their head. I mean, this person slept in tents, not hotels. It is an unusual thing. There are some other things that were on that list that I think you'd be surprised. They surprised me. But that being said, it's something that they think is important, right? That's back to the definition.
Well, I get I get that, but when I look at like kindness and justice and like friendship, belonging, some of those are for me more under that umbrella idea of like love and building a stronger community. And I don't know, I guess for me it's like in some ways I might say I believe in being kind, I believe in justice and not retributive. How is that word said?
Retributive?
I'm not in like punishing justice,
Oh,
but in healing
punitive.
justice. I believe that belonging is more of like a desire we generally have as humans.
So let me use the examples of beliefs to see if this helps you get across the thing.
Okay.
Because examples of beliefs are murder is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not necessarily going to follow into one of these as a value, but it is a belief that this is the way things should be or the way things should operate to some degree. Love is good. Love is love. Giving is better than receiving. I can't help worrying. So those are beliefs, and there are different types of beliefs. I thought this was rather interesting as I was preparing for this. There are behavioral beliefs, and I think that's where maybe your values will inform your behavioral beliefs. If you value kindness, then you will want to be kind to each other. You will believe that it is right or that you should be kind. Does that make sense?
Right.
Does that help?
I think so. I mean, I still think there's maybe a larger conversation. Brene Brown is one person. She has had her one experience in life. And I don't think that we have to say that there's only one answer to this.
Oh, absolutely.
This is one perspective on what you might value. I think that this should be more of a working document where it's like it's an ongoing list of like people talking about their values versus their beliefs. And I think what we were kind of trying to accomplish with this video and this conversation was to distinguish between how do you find values, how do you find beliefs, these sorts of things that maybe don't come intuitively.
Well, and I will say the other thing is, like, if you're talking to somebody and they're telling you what they believe, you might actually start understanding, okay, based on that belief, what do they value? Right? Or you can at least ask the question. I will say, as a younger Christian, early in my teens, there were things that I accepted as dogmatic beliefs. Okay. But when I looked at Christianity as a whole, there was a value of love. And so as I got older and starting to reevaluate some of those beliefs, I started bumping them up against the value of love. Like, how does this ideology of telling people they have to say a certain prayer to go to heaven, how does that show Jesus's love? Or that, how does it show that I love a person? Because my answer ended up being that doesn't.
So then for you personally, how do you kind of draw that line between like beliefs and dogma?
So I think I don't know if I do draw the line. To be honest, I'm not sure I'm there. I think there's
fair
a lot of crossover.
Honest.
Yeah, I don't.
And I think that people need to understand that, because I think, especially if you're going through a phase where you're trying to understand from like the religion point of view, which we are going to talk about later, but going through deconstruction specifically.
Yeah, that's next episode.
I think if you are kind of in a space where you're going through like a deconstruction, something like that, you may not feel that there's any difference whatsoever. And I think it can lead to a space where maybe you're feeling prickly about just beliefs in general. And so I think that if you are in that space, it makes more sense to look at things from that value perspective. And maybe do what you did about bumping those any beliefs that you may or may not have against the value and seeing, does this support my value?
Well, this is really why I wanted to have this conversation, because when I was going, I said in our pilot video about my journey of going from simplicity to complexity to deconstruction to harmony. When I was especially going from complexity to the deconstruction, I started feeling like everything that I believed to be certain that I could rely on was all of a sudden taken away from me. And so what I needed to have some sense of home, if you will, was I needed to find my values and plug into those and say, wait a second, I believe this, but maybe that belief needs to be challenged. But that doesn't change the value that I have. Like, one of my values is faith. Through that whole thing for me, I did not stop having faith. I had to change what I believed. I didn't lose the value of faith. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, is because when you're having difficult conversations, or when you're working with somebody who's asking and they're struggling to even, like, they want to get connected with you somehow, but they're having a hard time because the beliefs are tripping them up. If you can find that value and get a common ground, that is going to give you stability. It's going to give you your anchor. It's going to give you your sense of home, whatever it is that you need to go, wait a second, I'm okay. My world is not completely eroded away. And I think this is, for me, I see a lot of fundamental Christians, like, they're so scared and hanging on so deeply to their dogma because they don't know what else to do. And there's something else to do. Hang on to your values. Find what you value. You have something to anchor to. And that makes having the conversation less scary. You can change your mind, because that changing of your mind is not a compromising of who you are. Because your values is really who you are. It's not your beliefs. Your beliefs are kind of the symptom of the core value. A couple of videos back, we were talking about people that were Dissenter people. You remember that?
Yeah.
And part of the challenge is that if you've got a values conflict, you don't have a common ground, basically, to have the conversation. And interestingly enough, Renee lists power. And by the way, a lot of her research, I mean, she is a researcher. She works with people. She works with different teams. I'm sure that this list of values came from that research.
Yeah.
And a variety of people, not just her list. So I want to be very clear about that. But that being said, power is listed on the list of values. And I thought,
well, we had the conversation that I don't know how much people will admit that that's a value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we named one person that would be willing to, and I kind of agree with you. I think he would
yeah,
be
we're not going to name drop as much as we can avoid it.
yes, because y'all know. But there are others. And there are some people that are toxic in that. Okay. Well, I would think anybody that's after power, it feels like a toxic value to me, but I don't know everything. So I'm not even going to dwell on that.
I was thinking, like, you're saying this and I'm sitting here going, do we think that we should say that we have people who value money? Like that really is a value for them?
Oh, I think so.
Or,
I think that's in there.
oh, yeah.
A career is in there. I mean, that one's kind of like ambition
Yeah.
and like wanting to succeed. But anyway, so we digress just a smidge.
Yeah.
But
I'm just
the idea
curious.
is that if you don't have a common ground on the values front, you have, I think it's going to be really hard to have a conversation. Now, that being said, if you have someone who cares about you enough to be willing to have the conversation, it could take some effort to maybe find a common value, find some common beliefs. You can easily Google this stuff. That's all I did to prep for this today, is I Googled it. I do believe
we're
in
really
three
scientific
sources.
researchers.
Well, in a lot of ways, I'm relying on Brene because she is a scientific researcher.
Well, I feel that maybe at times we will need to include some sources and stuff.
Yeah.
Right now, we are not getting into like nitty gritty research backed things.
No.
I do think that we might eventually do that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea. What we're having right now is just where we're coming from, how we talk back and forth, how we.
Yeah.
So far, I don't think that we've run into too many disagreements in general, and I know that there are things that we disagree on, and the way that we've presented it has been, well, this is my stance, and I think we both come from this place of trying to listen to understand the other person's point of view. And again, this comes from a long time of working on our relationship and trying to get along, because we have not had good times in our relationship in the past, and I think we've come a long way. And I think that because we actually do have core values, that has helped us.
Yeah, exactly. And that is another reason why I wanted to share that, is the fact that we've had that core value of, we both value compassion, we both value justice, we both value kindness, we both value love. Those things have really served us well in developing the kind of relationship that we have. And I'm so grateful for that relationship. Anyway, so I'm very glad for our relationship that we had those values, and it helped us at a great time. And we want that for other people. I do not have that with my mother. And I don't have that with my father either. And the person I had it with died several years ago, and that was my spouse, my partner, and the love of my life. And until I had that, I didn't even know that that kind of relationship was even a possibility. So it opened it up. And so I want to open that up to you, because we don't know your backgrounds, and maybe you've never had someone who's loved you unconditionally, who's accepted you where you are, and been willing to walk with you through the pain of life, and be a comfort, be a support, be a friend, be someone who believes in you. So I want that for other people, because I think the world will be a better place with that, when we have those kinds of relationships. So yeah.
This is sort of the embracing of radical honesty. I feel like I have definitely met people, they tend to be leftists, and we haven't gotten into this conversation. Maybe at some point we'll talk about leftist versus like liberalism and like the distinguishing factors there. But
oh yes, please, let's.
I know that will be a fun one. So they tend to be leftists, and they've kind of embraced this like radical honesty way of like being in relationship, whether it's with friends or with partners. So whether it's friends or partners, they are trying to approach the relationship with, I'm not going to hide who I am, or if, you say something that I think needs to be called out, I'm going to be honest and tell you. And this is very different than some people on the other side's tendency to say, oh, I just tell it like it is, when really they're just using that as an excuse to be an asshole. So,
yeah. Something else, I'm going to just switch a little bit back to
Okay.
our beliefs. I wanted to bring up, because something else that I found when I was preparing is there are kind of some categories. Now, again, not all inclusive. We're just going to open this up.
this is a jumping off point.
It is, absolutely.
Okay.
So, some categories of belief, behavioral, like I think I should be kind. Okay. Unconscious, sometimes that's the thinking without thinking, you just don't even realize. And I will say I had a ton of that as an early Christian, where, again, when I started challenging those things, I was like, I didn't even realize I thought that. You know, and I have one that's really fun for people. I don't believe in hell.
Oh, yeah. We should have that conversation.
But the flip side of that coin is
You
I
don't
don't really
believe in
believe in heaven. And I've had some very liberal Christians have very different perspective and be like, really? You know, like that. They're fine with God is not omnipresent, but when you say to them there's no heaven, they're like, oh, whoa, that's too far. So it's kind of interesting.
I think we will definitely get into that. I think so. Future one thing that we can tease about in the future is that I want to have a discussion about death denial specifically.
Yeah.
I think this is a huge cultural issue in the United States specifically. I cannot speak for other places. I don't live other places.
Right.
And I do think it's a very pervasive issue in Christianity in general, not specifically fundamentalism, but it goes to an extreme with fundamentalism. And we will have that conversation, and I hope that y'all are looking forward to it and come back.
Yeah.
So subscribe so you don't miss it.
Yeah. So that was an unconscious belief that I actually realized after my spouse died. And it wasn't until then that I realized I believed that. Conscious belief is the things that we think about, the things that we say, oh, I should do this or I should do that. Those are conscious. And then the rational. And I thought that was interesting. Rational beliefs. That, I think, really makes sense to me after deconstruction, because there's a lot of things like after deconstruction, I go, well, rationally, some of that stuff that is kind of this body of dogma from the Christian fundamentalist wing of Christianity that you're supposed to just ascribe to. When you start to deconstruct it, it becomes there's rational beliefs that kind of replace some of those unconscious beliefs, if you will. So those are some different types of beliefs, groups or categories. Any thoughts there?
So the unconscious, I don't know. Would you say something like that God of the gaps thing is like an unconscious thing that we do, or is it a conscious thing?
I don't know. I think
I don't know why that's the particular thing that came up to me, but
no,
it was like when you were talking about it, because you were sort of using like the apologetics or the desire to like defend your belief or your religion framework, and so maybe that's why I thought of the God of the gaps argument.
I don't know, but there is a book, Malcolm Gladwell. So see, we've read lots of books. We can point to those. Those are our resources.
Is that the
link?
Oh,
link is where you think without thinking, and those thinks are like beliefs. There are beliefs.
But is he the one who wrote the? Why can't I think of it?
Outliers. Yes.
Okay.
Outliers was good because his whole point with Outliers is that these people were just in the right place at the right time. They really aren't some exceptional people per se. Well, I really like him as an author. I don't know some of these things that you're mentioning, but we should talk about it.
I'm curious. I don't know enough about that particular book, but I listen to the podcast If Books Can Kill, and they talk about like books that got super popular, and they talk about like they read the books and they talk about what is in the book and how it could have been, like, whether it was a good cultural thing that happened or a poor cultural thing that happened. Essentially, like, I don't know. Maybe that's something we should talk about in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to get too sidetracked because we're really good at that, and yeah. So
yeah. Well, I mean, so really that's all I've prepared for today. So I guess if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about that's come up or that you've thought of,
I think I want to give it over to other people to maybe leave some thoughts, some questions. I think one of the things that we are hoping for with this is that if there's something we've missed, to have other people from other perspectives to come in and challenge us and say, hey, what about XYZ thing? So I would like to see that. And I hope that we can be kind and respectful, kind to one another, kind in the comments.
Yes, please be nice to us is what I think.
It's illegal to be mean to me, actually, so.
What? You're silly. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it.
I just want to invite you all to, like I said, comment, subscribe, like the video, share it with friends, share it with family.
Yes. And between now and next week, or when we get to talk with you again, I hope you have a great whatever. I hope you have the love and the energy and the strength you need for each day.
Thank you so much for watching.
Bye.
Bye.